At just 21 years old, an American student made a reckless decision in 2016. He planned to enter North Korea. Spending New Year's Eve in one of the most closed-off and mysterious countries in the world was certainly daring, even reckless. Otto Warmbier had no idea that this choice would soon turn into the greatest regret of his life. Otto grew up in the small town of Wyoming, Ohio. He was a bright and ambitious young man, graduating second in his high school class in 2013 and later pursuing a double major in economics and commerce at the University of Virginia. His achievements were not limited to academics. He was also socially active, joining student organizations, helping organize events, and known widely for his cheerful, energetic personality. Curious about different cultures, Otto had already traveled through Europe and visited places like Cuba and Ecuador. By the end of 2015, during his third year at university, he decided to spend a semester in Hong Kong to experience life in East Asia. For Otto, Asia was a completely different world. Its culture, food, and traditions left a lasting impression on him. And while he was there, the idea of visiting the world's most secretive country, North Korea, took root in his mind. His parents were worried, but a China-based travel agency called Young Pioneer Tours advertised North Korea trips as safe and full of adventure, even for Americans. That reassurance was enough. So Otto booked a 5-day New Year's tour and on December 29, 2015, flew from Beijing to Pyongyang with a small group of about 10 other travelers. He was only 21, with a whole world waiting to be explored. But what seemed like an exciting adventure would soon spiral into a nightmare. North Korea is a country cut off from the outside world. Tourists are constantly monitored and only allowed to visit places carefully chosen by the regime. Otto's group was housed in the Yeonggakdo International Hotel, the only hotel in Pyongyang for foreigners. What Otto didn't know was that this building was not just a hotel. It was designed as a surveillance hub, where every movement of foreign visitors could be watched. The hotel even had a secret floor, strictly off-limits to guests. Every detail of the tour was orchestrated to showcase the regime's ideology. Tourists moved as if they were part of a stage performance, permitted to see only what the authorities wanted them to see. In such a system, even the smallest misstep could be interpreted as an attack against the state itself. For Otto and the others, everything seemed to go smoothly. They celebrated New Year's, visited the official sites, and on January 2, 2016, headed to Pyongyang International Airport to fly back to China.
But just before boarding, something shocking happened. During the security check, North Korean officials suddenly pulled Otto aside and detained him. His British roommate Danny watched in disbelief. One moment, everything was normal, and the next, Otto was taken away without explanation. It was the last time his tour group would see him. Otto Warmbier had been arrested. For the next 3 weeks, no one heard from him. The authorities offered no explanation, leaving his family and friends back in the United States terrified and desperate for news. Finally, at the end of January, Pyongyang broke its silence. The regime announced that an American student had been arrested for hostile acts against the state. According to North Korean officials, this cheerful young man was in fact a spy. Their evidence? State media released footage that allegedly showed Otto attempting to steal a propaganda poster from a restricted floor of his hotel. What would be a minor offense anywhere else was treated as a grave act of subversion in North Korea. To the regime, it wasn't just theft, it was an attempt to undermine the state itself. By this point, the story had taken a chilling turn. Otto had been detained for weeks, simply for attempting to take down a propaganda poster. He was being held alone in a place where entry was forbidden, where he barely knew the language, and where no one had any idea what was happening to him. Then, in February, a new and shocking development emerged. Dozens of journalists gathered in a hall, cameras ready. The doors opened and a young American was led inside, head bowed, dressed in a white jacket. It was Otto. On the early morning of January 1st, 2016, I committed my crime of taking out the important political slogan from the staff-only area of the Yeonggakdo International Hotel. I understand the severity of my crime, and I have no idea what sort of penalty I may face, but I am begging the Korean people and government for my forgiveness. I have been very impressed by the Korean government's humanitarian treatment of severe criminals like myself. The statement was broadcast live on North Korean state television. Otto appeared to be confessing voluntarily, pleading for mercy, but his words sounded hollow, rehearsed. His expression betrayed the lack of sincerity. The entire scene looked less like reality and more like something out of a movie script, yet it was being shown live to the world. In his confession, Otto even claimed that he had acted on behalf of an American church group and a secret student society. But the crime he described was nothing more than removing a poster from a hotel wall. The pressure behind his words was obvious. He was repeating a script forced upon him. Still, Pyongyang pushed the narrative further. Officials insisted the act was part of a hostile conspiracy against the state, with even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs declaring that Otto should be treated like a U.S. agent. Taking down a propaganda slogan, they said, was an insult to the sacred honor of the leadership. For Otto's family and friends back home, these accusations were absurd. He was a curious traveler, a young man who may have acted foolishly, recklessly even, but hardly a criminal. Yes, trying to steal a poster in a place like North Korea was naive, but he hadn't harmed anyone. The tragic irony was that committing an actual violent crime might not have caused such international uproar.
2 months passed after his staged confession. Still, no one knew the conditions he was being held under. Finally, on March 16, 2016, Otto was brought before the North Korean Supreme Court. But once again, it was clear that what unfolded was no real trial. In court, Otto repeated the script, crying, apologizing, begging for forgiveness, his head bowed in submission. To the outside world, it was obvious this was not justice. It was theater, performed on the regime's stage. The young student explained why he was there, admitting, "I made the biggest mistake of my life," and expressing deep regret. But the government's accusations were becoming more and more far-fetched. According to North Korean state media, Otto had been promised a used car worth $10,000 from a church group in the United States, as well as admission into the secret Z Society Club at the University of Virginia, in exchange for stealing the propaganda poster from the staff-only section of the Yanggakdo Hotel. Of course, these outlandish claims had no basis in reality. The university society in question publicly stated they had never even heard of Otto, let alone made such an offer. In fact, even in the available footage, Otto wasn't seen trying to take the poster away. He simply pulled it down and left it. Still, the court treated these bizarre allegations as truth. Judges declared the act a deliberate and organized crime. As a result, Otto Warmbier was sentenced to 12 years of hard labor, plus 3 years in prison, 15 years in total. It was one of the harshest penalties North Korea had ever given to a foreigner. And the regime's intimidation tactic shocked the world. Otto was devastated. For a poster he hadn't even taken, his life was turned upside down in a show trial that lasted only minutes. He had no one by his side, no way to appeal, and no genuine legal process to protect him. What was supposed to be an exciting trip had turned into 15 lost years, if he even survived them. From the moment he was arrested, North Korea refused to allow any independent observers or consular officials to see him. The US government, through the Swedish embassy, repeatedly requested consular visits, but Pyongyang rejected or ignored them. Otto was left completely alone, held in some unknown location deep inside North Korea. Meanwhile, the US government launched intense diplomatic efforts for his release. President Barack Obama repeatedly raised the issue during talks with North Korea, and the State Department condemned the regime's actions. But none of it made any difference. North Korea ignored the pressure, dismissing sanctions and ultimatums as meaningless. At the same time, the regime's nuclear weapons tests dominated international headlines, and Otto's case became just one more piece of a larger crisis. Neither his family nor US officials could get any reliable information about him.
days turned into months, and months into a year. Then came 2017. By January, Donald Trump had taken over the presidency from Obama. Unlike his predecessor, Trump didn't focus on economic pressure. His approach was far more direct and threatening. For North Korea, this made Otto seem less valuable as a bargaining chip. Finally, in June 2017, the news arrived. Otto would be released. After 17 months in captivity, with no word of his condition, he was coming home. His family and the media waited anxiously for his plane to land, but no one was prepared for what they would see.
North Korean officials claimed that just a week after his arrest, Otto had suffered from food poisoning and then slipped into a coma after being given a sleeping pill. In other words, they insisted he had been unconscious for over a year, but that this had been kept secret. His release, they said, was out of humanitarian concern, an act of mercy. The reality was far darker. Once Otto was back in the United States, he was rushed to the hospital. Brain scans taken in June 2017 showed extensive and severe brain damage. This kind of global injury typically comes from prolonged oxygen deprivation. In simple terms, Otto's brain had been starved of oxygen for too long, leaving irreversible damage. Yet exactly what caused this, whether torture, medical neglect, or something else, was never proven. Doctors discovered that nearly all areas of Otto's brain had suffered severe tissue loss, the result of a neurological injury that had occurred about a year earlier. What made it even more puzzling was that no fractures or visible signs of trauma could be found on his head or body. It was clear this was not the result of food poisoning, as North Korea had claimed, but what had actually happened to him remained a mystery. Some speculated that he might have attempted to take his own life and been deprived of oxygen, while others believed it was far more likely that he had been subjected to brutal interrogation. Sadly, the truth would never be known. During his year in a coma, Otto had probably been kept alive on a ventilator in complete isolation, cut off from the outside world. When he finally returned home, he could no longer see or hear. His family was devastated. No matter how forcefully the U.S. condemned North Korea, the regime stubbornly repeated its story of food poisoning and refused to accept responsibility. But Otto's condition spoke for itself, and nothing could undo the damage. A few days later, his father, Fred Warmbier, stood before the cameras in a press conference wearing the light-colored jacket his son had once worn in court. He tried to remain composed, but his anger was hard to contain. At first, he chose his words carefully, mindful of diplomatic sensitivities, but over time his frustration spilled out, and he openly referred to North Korea as terrorists. The truth was, there was nothing left to be done. Doctors explained that Otto's brain had suffered irreversible damage. In simple terms, he had lost all higher brain function. Though he had returned home, he was trapped in a vegetative state, surrounded by loved ones who could only watch in grief.
Unable to bear seeing their son live this way, the family made a heartbreaking decision. On June 19, 2017, just 6 days after his return, the Warmbiers requested that Otto be removed from life support. That afternoon, at 2:20 p.m., Otto Warmbier took his final breath in a Cincinnati hospital room, at least on his own soil. Even an autopsy offered little hope of answers. Medical examiners found no obvious signs of torture on his body, though most believed the treatment he endured amounted to deliberate cruelty. His death further strained relations between the United States and North Korea. President Trump and Kim Jong-un exchanged sharp words through the media, and only a month later, Washington banned American citizens from traveling to North Korea. For his family, the loss was immeasurable. Otto had been in his 20s, eager to explore the world. Whether or not he was the man caught on those security cameras, whether the footage had even been staged, didn't matter anymore. All he had done was take a propaganda poster off a wall. That was his only so-called crime, and yet it had cost him his life. So what really happened to Otto? Was he singled out by chance at the airport? Was it truly about that poster? Could he have been a target for other reasons? These questions remain unanswered and may never be. I'm Mr. Gents, and that's all for this week. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and comment. It really helps since I create all of this content on my own. As always, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.